Have you ever felt like something inside you was holding you back? Not because you lacked courage, not because you didn't try hard enough, but because of something deeper, something almost inherited, like an invisible thread tied around your ribs, pulling you back every time you dared to step forward. Carl Jung called this the mother wound, not a literal wound inflicted by your mother, but a psychic imprint, a legacy of expectations, silences, and unspoken rules passed down through generations of women. It's the voice that whispers, "Don't take up too much space. Don't outshine. Don't want more than you're given." And the cruelest part, you might not even hear it as a voice at all. It just feels like you. But here's the truth they don't tell you. This isn't weakness. This isn't fate. What looks like hesitation, what feels like self-doubt, it's not a flaw in your nature, it's a signal. A signal that somewhere along the way you were taught that belonging meant shrinking. That love was conditional on staying small. Jung wrote, "Nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their children than the unlived life of the parent." Think about that. The dreams your mother couldn't pursue, the anger she swallowed, the desires she buried. Those unlived lives don't disappear. They seep into the soil of the next generation. And if you've ever felt a strange guilt for wanting more, for refusing to settle, for daring to speak, that guilt isn't yours. It's a ghost. But here's where the alchemy begins. Because the mother wound isn't just a chain, it's a key. A key to the parts of yourself you've been afraid to claim. The world will call this selfishness. It will call you cold or difficult or too much. But what if the opposite is true? What if the moment you stop apologizing for your hunger, for your voice, your space, your right to take up room, is the moment you finally step into your full power? Seneca once said, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." And that's what this is. An ending. An ending of the old myth that a woman's worth is measured in how much she gives away. An ending of the idea that you must choose between being loved and being free. So ask yourself, where have you been holding back? Not because you wanted to, but because some ancient inherited fear told you to. Where have you mistaken the mother wound for your own voice? This is your invitation to listen deeper, to trace that thread back, not with blame, but with clarity. Because the wound only holds power as long as it stays unconscious. The moment you bring it into the light, it becomes something else entirely. Not a chain, but a choice. And if this resonates with you, if you feel something stirring, some old weight beginning to crack, then share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because the truth is, this isn't just your story, it's ours. And the revolution begins when we dare to speak it. There's a silence that lives inside so many women. A silence that isn't empty but full. Full of words they were never allowed to say. Full of anger they were taught was unbecoming. Full of needs they learned to call too much. This is the legacy of the mother wound. Not just what was passed down, but what was forbidden. The unspoken rule that a woman's worth is tied to how well she endures, how gracefully she bends, how quietly she disappears into the needs of others. Jung called this the shadow, the parts of ourselves we exile because they're deemed unacceptable. And for women, the shadow is often rage, not the destructive kind, but the holy kind, the kind that says, "No more," the kind that refuses to shrink another inch. But here's the tragedy. When a woman's anger has been shamed for generations, she doesn't just suppress her rage. She forgets it exists at all, and so she turns it inward. Have you ever noticed how women punish themselves for wanting more? How they call themselves needy for asking to be seen, selfish for setting a boundary, ungrateful for refusing to settle. This isn't humility. This is the mother wound speaking. It's the echo of 1,000 silenced voices whispering, "Who do you think you are?" But what if that anger, the one you've been taught to fear, is actually your compass? What if it's not a sign of brokenness, but of awakening? Marie-Louise von Franz, Jung's closest collaborator, once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And that's the heart of it, isn't it? The mother wound keeps you fractured, ashamed of your hunger, your voice, your fire. But healing begins when you stop seeing these as flaws and start recognizing them as strengths. Think of the women in your life who seem unshakable, the ones who refuse to apologize for their presence, the ones who don't soften their truths to make others comfortable. They aren't cruel, they aren't cold, they're whole. And that wholeness is what the world calls too much, because it refuses to be controlled. So ask yourself, where have you mistaken silence for strength? Where have you swallowed your truth because it was easier than speaking it? This isn't about blaming the mothers who came before us. They were surviving in a world that gave them even less room. But it is about breaking the cycle, about saying, this pain stops with me. Because the truth is, the mother wound doesn't just hold you back, it holds all of us back. Every time a woman dims her light, the world loses a piece of its brilliance. Every time she swallows her words, the truth loses a voice. But you're part of a different story now. A story where anger becomes clarity, where silence becomes speech, where the wound becomes wisdom. And if this speaks to you, if you feel something unlocking inside, then pass it on. Share it with another. Woman who's ready to remember her power, because the healing doesn't happen alone. It happens when we dare to speak the unspeakable together. There comes a moment, quiet but seismic, when a woman realizes she no longer has to inherit what was given to her, when she understands that the scripts handed down through generations, about suffering in silence, about earning love through sacrifice, about mistaking endurance for strength, are not laws. They are choices, and she gets to choose differently. This is where the real work begins, not in blaming the past, but in reclaiming it, in examining the stories you've carried, the ones that say love must hurt, that self-denial is virtue, that a woman's highest calling is to disappear into the lives of others, and asking, does this actually belong to me? Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming who you truly are, beyond the expectations of family, culture, even history itself. And it's terrifying. Because for so many women, the mother wound isn't just a personal pain. It's a cultural blueprint. To defy it feels like betrayal, like you're breaking some sacred contract. But here's the truth. The contract was never yours to sign. Think of the fairy tales we grew up with. The ones where the stepmother is wicked, the mother is dead, and the daughter's worth is measured by how well she endures. These aren't just stories. They're blueprints for the mother wound. They teach us that a woman's power is dangerous unless it's used in service to others. That to want for yourself is to risk losing everything. But what if the opposite is true? What if the most radical thing a woman can do is refuse to abandon herself? Clarissa Pinkola Estes, in Women Who Run with the Wolves, writes, "To be strong does not mean to sprout muscles and flex. It means meeting one's own numinosity without fleeing. Your numinosity, your divine spark, your wild essence. That's what the mother wound tries to extinguish. Not because mothers want to harm their daughters, but because they were taught to fear that very spark in themselves. So the healing isn't just about you. It's about breaking a spell that's centuries old. Start small. Notice the moments when you reflexively shrink, when you apologize for existing, when you mute your opinion to keep the peace, when you mistake your own needs for burdens. These are the threads of the wound. And each time you choose instead of default, each time you say, I am allowed to take up space and mean it, you're not just healing yourself, you're rewriting the inheritance for every woman who comes after you. This is how we end the cycle. Not with grand gestures, but with daily revolutions, with the quiet, fierce insistence that you are not here to play a role written for you before you were born. And if this resonates, if you feel the weight of what you're ready to release, then share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because the truth is, no woman heals alone. We heal in circles. We heal by whispering, "Me too," and then together, learning to speak in full voice. There is a moment in every woman's awakening when she realizes the love she has been waiting for was never coming from outside herself, not in the way she truly needed, not the kind of love that sees her, all of her, and says yes. This is the final reckoning of the mother wound, when we stop searching for the perfect mother in our families, in our partners, in the world, and become her for ourselves. Jung called this the divine mother archetype, not a person, but a force, the part of the psyche that knows how to hold without smothering, to nurture without demanding sacrifice, to love without conditions. And here's the secret: she has always lived within you. You were simply taught not to hear her. How many times have you abandoned yourself at the altar of someone else's comfort? How often have you mistaken being needed for being loved? These aren't personal failings. They're the fingerprints of the wound. But healing doesn't happen through more self-sacrifice. It happens when you do the most radical thing possible. You mother yourself. Not with the conditional love you may have learned, but with the fierce, unwavering devotion you deserved all along. You become the one who says, "Your hunger is holy. Your anger has wisdom. Your solitude is sacred ground, not abandonment." This is where the alchemy happens, where the wound becomes the womb. The poet Nayyirah Waheed writes, "You do not have to be a mother to be a sanctuary." And this is the final truth of the mother wound. It was never really about your mother. It was always about your relationship to yourself, about learning to be your own first home. So let this be your invitation. The next time you feel that old ache, the one that whispers, "You are too much and not enough all at once," don't reach outward. Reach in, place your hand on your own chest and say, "I am here. I am listening. You don't have to earn my love." This is how we break the spell. Not by becoming perfect, but by becoming present. Not by transcending our humanity, but by finally claiming it. And if these words have stirred something in you, if you feel the weight of old chains loosening, then pass this on. Share it with another woman who's ready to remember. The love that will truly save her has been within all along, because this isn't just your story, it's every woman's story. And the revolution begins when we stop waiting to be saved and realize we are the ones we've been waiting for.